The Rambam had said that there's certain inborn traits a person is born with. A person's giving, a person is marginally, a person has insatiable appetite for food, for pleasure, a person's stoic. This is just part of the chemical and emotional makeup of a person. And that's how you gravitate in that direction because of these inborn characteristics. He says that in the second paragraph, he says that even though the characteristic is not there yet, but you have a vulnerability to gravitate in that direction. But if you gravitate there, you will develop it. You'll develop that. You know, certain people have a certain susceptibility to alcoholism. But you have to drink to a point to become an alcoholic. Other people don't have that susceptibility. Even if they drink excessively, they will not become alcoholics. They're able to take control. So initially, a person's not born an alcoholic. But his chemical profile is that if he goes beyond a certain point, we have late onset diabetes, right? There's some people are born as diabetics. It's like because they don't maintain their weight and exercise and health. Therefore, they develop diabetes because they overeat. So the overeating activates that diabetes. That's what it does. It's the same thing with characters. Certain characteristics, they're realities. You have a positive, optimistic attitude about things. People are optimists. Person naturally, then pessimists. That's a reality of the person's personality. Other people, as I said, if they're exposed to an environment, that's when it triggers certain. It's called triggers. There are many triggers in life. It triggers something. Other people, even if they experience whatever that is, it doesn't trigger anything. It may be an unpleasant moment for the moment, but it passes. That's the reality of people. Years ago, I once went to a doctor. He was Oriental. He had an MD, but he was an expert in Chinese medicine. You know, he do acupuncture and all that kind of thing. And he told me that the way God created the human being, we have certain inner organs which break down the food, that the body should be able to benefit and process the food, the nutrition, everything. What about if you overwork the body? He's speaking about the pancreas. The pancreas produces insulin, but you realize every system has a limit. What happens if you overtax the system? Once, twice, it could recover. What about if you overtax it continuously? Eventually, you damage the system. When you damage the system, it doesn't produce the insulin you need. As a result of that's why there's such a high rate of diabetics in the United States, because based on the American diet, they've abused that inner organ. Therefore, they need insulin because the body doesn't produce the insulin anymore. That's what it's about. But naturally, it wouldn't. Same thing with our characteristics. If you go to a certain extent, it will activate something, then naturally you don't behave this way any longer. But once you cross that line, you're at a different level. Now you've activated you triggered something, and therefore now you behave differently. The Gemara tells us something very interesting. The Talmud. Listen to this. There's an organ in the human body. It's called the male organ. The more you sate it, the hungrier the person becomes. The more you suppress it, the less hungry it is. That's the sexual organ. You indulge, you think years ago, when people wanted to stop smoking, when they used to smoke, if you remember, Kent and Lark were the cigarettes which weren't menthol. Kent Lark. Camel was the most extreme, without the filter, Camel. That's the guy, Joe Camel, he walked a mile if you wanted to smoke a Camel. Okay. But people were addicted to smoking. They said, if you smoke 4 packs a day for about 3 days, you're not smoking any longer. Because you actually, after that, you're not going to be able to breathe. And you're going to swear it off. You're not going to smoke. Maybe it worked, maybe it didn't work. But when it comes to sex, the more you indulge, the more you want it. It feeds on itself. When you wean yourself from it, eventually it totally dissipates. That's the way it is. That is the nature of the human being, the way God created him. Therefore, it's very interesting. The whole concept. I'm not going to record this. There was a talk show host. What was his name?
Joe Pine.
No, he's a Jew. He was a conservative Jew, very smart man. Even to today, he's a great mind. Great.
Dennis Prager.
Dennis Prager. So many years ago, there was a certain person, Yad Avram. He gave me a subscription to a newsletter that he put out once a month. Dennis Prager, and on various topics. So one of the articles in the newsletter was he went to Oxford to debate a topic. What was the debate? Does religion have relevance and bearing on one's values as a human being? Religion, or doesn't it? So he brought up a statistic, in England, they took a poll. If a person, and this story goes back over 30 years ago, if a person has his dog drowning and a human being is drowning, who would you save, your dog or the human being? Over 70% of youth between the age of 16 and 18 said, or 15, they will save the dog over the human being, allow the human being to drown. That was the statistic. That was the poll. So he was bringing out a point. If a person's life is devoid of religion, what do you value? You value what you value most. Dog is man's best friend. So you save your dog over the human being, but it's a human being. You know what a human being is? Human being was created by God. He's an image of God. But you know what a human life is? A dog could be replaced. A human being, you can't replace a human being. But they said, no, my dog is more important. See, brought out the point, without religion, without God, your values and your perceptions of reality are not good. You're not in a good place. That was the point he made. So we talk about noticing. What do we notice, what we don't notice? If one's life is devoid of God, and society is devoid of God, society no longer has conscience. Conscience, which is divine conscience, what you have to value, whether you like it or not. Human life. Euthanasia is not justified under any circumstance. Euthanasia. It's God to determine when you live and when you die. It's not up to the nurse, because the hospital bed is needed for another person, and this life doesn't have that value, because based on the gross national product, he's not a productive human being. Therefore, pull the plug and give it to somebody who will be productive. I mean, what are you playing God? How do you play God? The answer is because if you know who God is, you don't play God. But if playing God is what you live with your conscience, and conscience says the productive human being has greater value than the non-productive human being, so God says, pull the plug. That's where it's coming from. But society has gone beyond that. There's an expression, we push the envelope is continuously being pushed to the nth degree.